Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Raid Shadow Legends. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the best epic nukers for each faction. Now, there's a lot of people who might be looking for something like this for, say, faction crypts or maybe even cursed city nodes. I think it's worth having a couple of these, especially AoE nukers, on your roster. And for those, I think it's easier to get epic characters, obviously, than legendary characters. So that's why I wanted to do a video to kind of showcase some of the best from each faction. There may be some honorable mentions, especially I'm trying to not include too many void champions, but when there's some really good ones, I will point them out here in case you do have them on your roster. It's just a little bit harder to get void epics. So we're going to be starting from the top, going to the bottom, and we're going to be covering a lot of different champions in today's video. Before we get started with the video, I do remind people that if you haven't started or you want to make a new account, download using the QR code in the top right to get the recently reworked Narma the Returned, and also these three amazing epics. You can get Allure at account level 15, Tagore at 30, and Deacon Armstrong at level 40. And don't forget to use the promo code Demon Slayer within the first 48 hours of a brand new account to get the amazing legendary DPS Tholen Foulbeard. Okay, so let's start off things with Bannerlords, and I gotta say this is the most unimpressive, my least favorite faction. I have to say, most of the epic champs, a lot of them are kind of trash, to be honest. But I do want to point out a few specific ones that kind of, well, maybe stand out a little bit to me. And some may disagree with some of this. If you do have some of them, there are some okay ones. I will have some honorable mentions in Bannerlords because it's just not my favorite faction. So I want to point out Sir Artemage. He is an epic, sorry, I meant to say force, attacker champion here, and his AoE is going to come from Ring True. Remove all debuffs from this champion, then attack all enemies. So this actually has a modifier of 4.2 times attack, and I will be mentioning this for most of them, which I am aware of anyways. And so this is an attack-based champion, and it's going to be 4.2 times attack. These ratios are kind of important because it kind of makes some better than others. He does also have some. He has a single target nuke as well, which ignores 30% of target's defense. I do kind of like these characters that have, if there's any of them out there that have ignore target's defense, because this tends to let them hit a little bit harder. Unfortunately, the attack and crit damage is I was looking for the right word, requires you to kill an enemy predicated on you killing the enemy first. I mean, it would be great if you could do this and then go into the A2. But, the point of this video, though, is to talk about characters that can just kind of sweep AoE sweep waves. That would be kind of important to have. Secondly, I do want to point out Oathbound. Now, I don't have him, but his modifiers apparently are pretty good. It's on his A2. Also, it does have a decreased attack debuff for anyone that's left standing. So this AoE attack here is 4 times defense, and there are a lot of solid defense nukers out there as well. And what's great about these characters is that, well, they have higher defense, so likely they're not going to fall over as quickly as attack-based glass cannon type DPS characters. So I want to point that out as well. Some decent other debuffs as well would make it on the list here. So we have block active skills, we have attack down, and we do have a freeze, although it's only a 1-hit A1, so not super great there. Some other ones that are okay, but I didn't really want to include them is like Lady Quillen, and the reason why is because she is a Lady Mikage fusion, which most likely you're eventually going to get rid of. But if you do have an extra copy, she does have a nice AoE attack here. If you can get her crit capped, this does also place a crit damage buff on all allies, and also a 50% increased attack buff on all allies. But again, you have to make sure that she's basically 100% crit cap to get that out. The damage is okay. It's nothing insane by any means, but having that extra utility there for the rest of the team is kind of nice as well. If I missed anything, let me know. I really don't like this faction for some reason. Let's go on over to High Elves. So there's a couple of characters that I want to talk about, namely Royal Guard. Royal Guard is a staple in a lot of people's DPS or nuker lineup, I think, especially because of this A2 takedown. So this is basically based on their max HP, but it does have a 2x attack modifier, plus about 10% of the enemy's max HP. This is really, really good in places like Spider, but in general, like if you have any need for some AoE damage, especially from the High Elf faction, then Royal Knight is going to be a part of that. Also, he does have some okay debuffs here. He has a speed down debuff, which is not bad if you happen to need it against a single target or something like that. And he does have a decreased defense of 60% as well on a single target. But again, you're mostly going to be using this for the big nuke. Also want to talk about Tayrel because he is defense-based as well. He does have an AoE nuke here that's defense-based. It also does apply defense down as well. This one's a 3.5x defense nuke, so not as high as some that are like in the 4 or high 3 range, but still nonetheless is pretty good. He does have an attack down on his basic as well, and does do some... this one's not bad for the turn meter. Again, if you're needing it for some single target stuff, decrease the target's turn meter by 50%. If the attack fully depletes the turn meter, place a stun. But this is mostly the 50%, I suppose, when it comes to boss encounters. So that's kind of important to note. And someone in the Void section, I want to talk about Ethlin the Golden, because I think I might start to build him as well. His modifiers are actually pretty good. He has a 2-hit attack that does 2.1x twice, so it really brings it up to like 4.2 really over the full course of the damage. But it does a combination of block, active skills, and true fear, so these are pretty nice to have. So again, characters that have some decent debuffs or buffs, I suppose, as well on their kit would be really nice. This one's really nice because you can actually do this before you go into the AoE, so he's giving himself additional crit damage on top of doing the AoE. So again, making sure that you go into this, go from the A3 into the A2, some pretty solid stuff. So that is the High Elf faction. Moving on to Sacred Order, some epics here of note. One that I really want... there might be others. This is kind of like Bannerlords for me as far as nuking goes. But I have to point out Fenix, because Fenix is one of the best Sacred Order nukers and also has some of the highest modifiers. So I know it's not AoE. This A1 apparently is like some of the strongest A1s in the game. It also has an extra hit if the target has any debuffs, so this makes it hit extremely hard. A lot of people used him on Ice Golem just because on autos that you can have him kill the minions on the side and basically one-shot it with an A1, and it does a lot of damage. Now the A2, Stern Partner, attack all enemies. This one is also pretty good and also has block buffs and block active skills, which is really nice. It's a 3.5x AoE, but the single target that he does is also another big nuker here. The Soul Feebleness is a 6.7 X attack, single target attack here, which is pretty powerful, with also a decreased defense and speed debuff. So he has a lot of different debuffs, which makes him pretty solid as well. I think he's one of the best nukers just in general for the Sacred Order faction. As far as the rest of them, I mean, you're grasping at straws. There's just so many support champions on this list that I don't actually... no, I forget. I don't even know who actually has more AoE on this. So let me know if I screwed up here on Sacred Order, if there's some character that you really like. I don't... that has full-on AoE. I mean, it's pretty rare. So we're going to move on to a different faction. I really don't like Sacred Order. Barbarians! It's okay. I want to talk about Alika, though, so a character that I'm currently building right now. I kind of build epics. I'm in the position on my account anyways where I can build a couple of epics per month, maybe 3 or 4 based on my epic books from my Demon Lord, and Alika is going to be coming up next with the AoE, this AoE, Disorient, so attack all enemies. And what I like about this, though, has a % chance of increasing cooldowns of all enemy skills by 2. So this is really good on wave content, because if they somehow survive, right, they're not going to have their cooldowns in order to use their skills against you, and they'll be forced into an A1. So this is pretty nice to have. This part, it's mostly irrelevant when she has Sakara, which is her sister, is not as good, so don't worry about that. But I do like the single target nuke as well, which will ignore 50% of the target's defense if their max HP is higher than this champion's max HP. This is really hard when you're fighting those faction crypt bosses. So another good champion there, and also has a 30% chance of placing an extra hit on the A1. This hit is always critical. So I do like the damage that Alika puts out. As far as some of the other characters here, damage-wise, honestly, not really a big fan. I was struggling, honestly, to come up with someone that is really good. Has an AoE. Kalia is okay. I don't have her. She's kind of... well, she doesn't really require to have other characters, but she does do a heal block here. AoE, which is okay there, on a cooldown of 4, 3 with books, so that's not too bad. But otherwise, she's pretty... I would say that she's second to Alika, though, in my opinion. Okay, moving on to Ogryn Tribes. We have a few. Well, we have, I think, one major one that I really want to talk about. Someone that I'm using a lot. Lauren, Lauren the Cutter. Now, I really like his kit, even though it is pretty basic. Lauren the Cutter has some pretty good stuff. His AoE here, Frightful Frenzy, is a 3.8x attack. It also applies Leech and Heal Reduction. But if you also need something else in this kit, which is really nice, also I use him a lot on Amius. He's a very good character for heal reduction on Amius. His Snatch into Darkness A3, very good in faction crypts and other certain bosses in Cursed City because it decreases the target's turn meter by 100%. It's a 100% chance if you have some epic books into him, which is very valuable in a lot of places. So I do like this. I like characters that can nuke, that can also do a little bit of something else. His A1's okay here as well. His 3 times does a little bit of healing too. So Lorne is pretty good as far as Ogryn goes. They don't have a lot of good options for AoE. Not that I'm aware of, anyways. There may be some other characters. I don't know. I forget. Does Siege Hulk do some AoE? Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does do an AoE. Now, I think he's also okay. Like if you need to use him, I prefer Lauren personally. But if you have any good red stars, maybe on Siege Hulk, it's okay. Right. He does. No, sorry. The thrashing fit because he places this on this first before he puts up his damage. So I do like characters that also buff before they do their attack. So that's not too bad as well. And then it kind of goes into a decreased defense debuff, which is nice to have as well. So if you do need another DPS character, if you have Siege Hulk, these are the two characters that I personally would recommend as far as nuking goes. Let's move on to Lizardmen. Not a big fan of this was my last faction crypts that I cleared just because I ended up crotching it with Leo. Sorry, with Donnie. Donnie and Raisin. And I just did not like the options for epics, but if I had to choose any of them, which I hate that I have to choose a Void character right off the bat, but Slixus Stripe Hide, what I really like about his AoE is that before attacking, he does a crit rate and crit damage buff for 2 turns before he goes into his AoE. Now, unfortunately, his AoE is only about a 3.3x modifier there, so it's not as strong, but he does get that bump in the crit damage, so that might help you a lot as well. Some of his other attacks just does a lot of basic single target attacks, but can put a stun in, ignores shield, increased defense, and strength and attacks 2 times. This actually hits pretty hard. And if he does happen to kill anyone with this one's not bad. If he kills anyone in general throughout the battle, he's going to get additional crit damage as well in waves. And if his A2 kills an enemy, the next skill that they'll use will ignore 30% of the target's defense. So if you are able to go from A2 into A3, something like this, then it would do more damage. Also with books, you can get this down to a cooldown of 3. So he's pretty good as far as wave content goes because it's going to come back around. I don't like many of these other options. I've heard that some people have turned Venomage into a bit of a nuker by using attack-based gear, right? You could use this AoE here, which is like not insane modifiers, but you know, if you need to, you can stack up attack and crit on this character on Venomage, just do a little bit additional damage here. I'm just really not a big fan of most of these characters, I'll be honest. Let me know again if I missed anyone that I should have brought up here in Epics. Basilisk, so the only thing I would say about Basilisk here is that his A1 is AoE, so he might be a good person for a stun set to be able to kind of just make sure that you control any faction-related fights with that as well. Moving on to Skinwalkers here. So Skinwalkers, this one's an interesting one. There's a couple. I want to make note of Scabrius because his AoE here, Gnawing Horde, while it doesn't do a whole lot of things right, but it is a very high attack modifier at 4.1x. So this is a pretty strong hitting attack, even though it really doesn't do a whole lot else. Damage increases by 20% when attacking enemies under poison debuffs, if you happen to have anyone. He does have poison on his A1, but nothing that really applies it before you're probably going to nuke. He's okay. Yep, that's all I have to say. He's okay. But otherwise, it's mostly just for this one nuke. And secondly, there's another okay one, Basher. Now, Basher, he looks like a couple of the other characters in Skinwalker's faction, but he has this AoE Stinging Blast. And Stinging Blast is also a 3.8x. However, so it's a little bit weaker than Scabrius's, but it does increase the cooldown of all skills on each enemy by 2 turns. Like, I forget which one of the other characters we talked about that did that as well, but this is guaranteed. right? So you just need the accuracy, I believe, just like Alice the Wander. People might know her. We'll call it the spin to win, but increasing the cooldowns is really big on a lot of characters. So this is a really nice ability to have, but he is a Void champion, so just keep in mind there. That's why I wanted the kind of the honorable mentions here. If I missed anyone else, please let me know about that. Let's move on to Orcs. This one's pretty easy. There's, I think, one that's like just really the best. And it's going to be Zargala. Zargala is, in my opinion, the best epic nuker of the Orcs faction. Crack armor, attack all enemies 3 times, and then the first hit has a chance to apply defense down to 60% defense down for 2 turns. And that means it's going to follow up with the additional attacks, of course, with the defense down applied. Now, her attack is about 1.2x 3 times, so really about 3.6. But because you're able to apply that defense down on the first hit and then it does 2 more subsequent hits, it's going to hit a little bit harder there. So I do think she's pretty nice. This is also really nice if you happen to kill anyone with the A2, it'll just go into the A3 again, so that gets some more damage out if someone's already low. So that's really nice to have as well. I think Zargala is pretty nice there. I will mention Seer. Seer is really hard to not build up to, but you need to basically enable her by having a lot of buffs. So she does a shit ton of damage with this A3 Karma Burn, but she needs to remove buffs from all allies and enemies. So you basically need to set her up by having a bunch of buffers on your team, and then it steals all the buffs, it absorbs them, and just does a shit ton of damage. And you can often one-shot a wave with this. Only thing I don't like about this is that basically it requires you to have specific characters that are going to have you available. You need to build a specific team around her, and it's a bit of a pain, in my opinion. She's good. She hits really hard. She's probably honestly the best nuker, but you have to enable her, which means that it's not so easy to build a team for that. As far as other ones, I think nuking wise, that is what I'm comfortable talking about. But let me know if there's any other ones that you've used that you like to use from the Orcs faction. For Demonspawn, there is 2 that I have in mind. One, which a lot of people do use, he's an HP based nuker named Magnar here, and it's his A2 specifically percussive pound. Attack all enemies, places an extra hit on enemies without HP burn. So basically, don't have HP burn on the enemies and you'll do a 2-hit AoE. And this is based on his HP. Okay, so this is a 0.22x HP modifier. Now, that means like at 100,000 hit points, which is a lot, it's going to do about 22,000. But, of course, it'll hit twice, so that's about 44,000, which is pretty good. That's like pre-crits or anything like that. So make sure that you don't have any HP burn when you're using him, and he's going to hit pretty hard. And so you just want to stack up that crit rate, the crit damage rate, make sure that all your nukers have like 100% crit or as possible, right? That makes him very powerful there. That's going to be his main nuking potential there. If you don't want to use him, there's also Gorlos Helma, who I have to build up as well. He does have a AoE with defense down, and this actually has a pretty decent modifier. It's, I believe, 4.x attack. So this one's pretty strong as well, which I do like. And he does do a little bit of a difference, some extra stuff here. Some fill turn meter, things like that. I don't think he's the best to use with Magnar though, because of all this HP burn stuff going on. But otherwise, this is a pretty nice one to have. A lot of the other characters, I mean, I like Allure. I don't really want to talk about Allure with regards to nuking because she's okay. But I would say that she is better for her A1, which decreases the target's turn meter. But if you do have Allure, she's probably worth building up as well. Moving on to the next faction, which is going to be the Undead Hordes. There's a couple, mostly the dark characters, right? So I want to talk about Dark Elhain. She is available for free in the login calendar. She was also available for free if you did the Halloween mini-game events. So her A2, Death's Majesty, what I really like about this is it increases her attack before she fires off. So that means that it's going to hit even harder before she does it compared to other characters. I really like the skill. It's a 3.8x attack ratio here. And you get the bonus of having the attack up if you didn't have anyone else that actually gives it to her. So this one's pretty solid. I do really like her, actually. So I'm going to build her as well pretty soon. Dark Athel's like the lesser version of this. The reason why I want to bring it up is because she actually has 2 AoEs. So she has a Blaze of Blood, which does... sorry, I forgot to mention that Dark Elhain also puts a speed down. Anyways, Dark Athel can put a speed down as well. But she's got 2 AoEs, so it's not bad if you happen to need it. But I don't like the conditions that exist here. Apparently, it was designed for Spider in mind. That's why it kills 6 or more, kills 10 or more. It would have to be like Spider, right? You're clean sweeping an entire Spider wave. Like, that's exactly what this is designed for. But regardless, she does have 2 different AoEs, but they're on cooldowns of 4. So Dark Athel and Dark Elhain, but Elhain first. If you have her, she is probably the better priority there. Dark Elves. Good old Dark Elves, right? Okay, so there's like 2 that I want to point out. The first one I want to talk about is Durandal, if you have him. So I do like, what I really like about his kit in general is that he does ignore defense. So attacks all enemies, ignores 15% of target's defense, and then for every crit hit, he gains 10% turn meter. Now this AoE is on a 3.9x attack modifier. And then his other stuff does, like a single target's pretty good as well. 50% target defense ignore, places a perfect veil if it hits critical. Most of your nukers should be crit capped at this point, so that's going to land. And then he also has freeze on his A1, which is a pretty nice control as well if you happen to still need that if you're at the point where you're using A1s. The second character, now she's like the epic version of Coldheart, pretty much, and it's going to be Lua. So Lua's, I don't know if she's like better than Coldheart exactly, because Coldheart's single target A3 with the turn meter rewind is really good. But she actually basically does the same thing there on that. Attacks one enemy, decrease target's turn meter by 100%, will ignore shield block damage. It's like not as good, but it still has that turn meter reduction. But she does have this Hail of Arrows AoE, attacks 3 times, and each crit hit will heal her by 2.5. That's not really that important, but the 3 hit AoE there is pretty decent because her modifiers are 1.4 times 3, which brings it up to about 4.2x attack. So that part's not too bad as well. This one's also pretty neat. It's a single target attack, but then 50% of that damage is then to everyone else, assuming it's a crit hit. So pretty interesting kit here. If you have Lua, I have a couple of copies of Lua, so I might empower her and level her up pretty soon. So those are the characters that I want to kind of talk about there. I heard Dark Kale is okay. I don't have any personal experience. I don't like that basically his A3 just does no damage there. It's just placing debuffs. But his A2 Binding Darkness, apparently this is just a better version, I suppose, of the regular Kale. Attacks all enemies, 75% chance of placing decreased attack, and then each critical hit has a 75% chance of increasing duration of debuffs, if that's even important. I mean, the goal really is just to clean sweep a wave. Regular Kale actually hits pretty hard too. I know this is not a rares video, but regular Kale is a pretty good AoE or two. If like I have no problems using Kale still, which I do as a nuker. But if you want some other ones, those are the better ones in my opinion. Few factions left. We have Knights Revenant. And this one's an interesting set because I want to talk about these 2 characters together, and that's going to be Sanisha and her sister Skullcrown, and that's because they often work together, or at least Skullcrown works with they both have AoEs on their A1. Now Sanisha's though is a little bit different. This is a 3x attack A1, and if they're under 50% HP, then it'll do a second hit. So basically, if the first hit knocks them under 50%, or they're already starting at under 50%, this is going to do a lot of damage because that's potentially anywhere from 3x attack or 6x attack damage over one hit on an A1. I like to run both Sanisha and Skullcrown with stun sets, attack-based stun sets, because they're AoE a lot, and so I do like that. Skullcrown is here, but she is a Void Epic, so I want to put that in mind. Her A1 is also AoE, but it doesn't do as much damage. It's 1.8x attack, but because it triggers above 50% at the start, it's very likely to then lead into about 3.6, because it's probably going to hit twice from that point on. Now, her AoE also does some pretty respectable damage. Corrupting Touch, it does 4.3x attack, which is pretty high actually, and it has that added bonus of applying a weaken debuff as well. So between the 2 of them, they do some pretty good damage, and I believe they have some synergy here where she revives basically if Sanisha's on the team, so some survivability here as well. Some other characters, what else did I want to point out? So not quite AoE though, but if you need some really powerful single target nuking, it's going to be Whisper. Honestly, probably one of the harder hitting single target characters in the game. Attacks one enemy 2 times, grants an extra turn if the target's under decreased defense and weaken. So you'd have to enable that a little bit. She can do this. She can do the weaken on her A1. I do like the A2 that gives her an attack and crit rate buff before she attacks. Will ignore defense if the target's under weaken, right? If you have other characters that can apply this stuff. So she does have the potential to hit really, really hard. That's why her reviews are so good when it comes to other content. Even for faction wars, you can use probably a solid single target attacker, and she'll probably kill people pretty quickly. So there is Whisper. I do have her at level 60. So there we go. Those are Knights Revenant characters. We're down to Dwarves, Shadowkin, and Sylvan. Let's talk about an old one, and then we'll talk about a new one. Let's talk about Philia. Philia? Am I saying that right? So she does have an AoE here, Righteous Evocation. It is an AoE attack. It also fills Champion's turn meter as well. Now, this is on a 3.5x, so it's not as strong. Dwarves is a little bit of a weird faction in terms of they're solid nukers. However, also a depleting turn meter skill here, which is really nice to have. So if you do have Philia, she's a great option for dungeons as well if you happen to need this, although she doesn't really have much utility beyond that, so it's mostly just damage. But I do like this part on her passive. So if she has 2 or fewer buffs when she starts her turn, she's getting a free 50% attack and crit damage buff. So that 3.5 on the AoE, well, you're at least hitting in with attack up and crit damage up, so that's going to hit a little bit harder. And so I think that's pretty nice. And it does not have a cooldown, so basically she's permanently going to have that, which makes her a pretty solid nuker. Second, who is a newer one? This was like a couple of months ago. Hilda was added for the Fusion event. I can't quite remember, honestly, but Hilda Arnorn daughter. She's got this AoE here, which is great because, again, she's applying an increased attack buff on all allies, not just herself, but on all allies, and it has a 40% chance of placing a stun, up to 60%. So this one's pretty nice. In terms of its modifiers, it has a 3.7 attack AoE modifier, which isn't too bad. This A2 also hits pretty hard if you need some single target damage, and this goes up to 100% extra damage based on how many debuffs are on the target. So yeah, this is a pretty nice one. Hilda's a newer one, but I think it's pretty good. Allies deal 15% more damage to targets under a heal reduction or a stun debuff. So this is pretty nice on bosses too. So I think Hilda's a pretty strong one. Unfortunately, I had to get rid of her because I forget. Is it said, actually, you know what? No, maybe I recently pulled her. Maybe I pulled her again. But I had to get rid of her for the fusion. It seems I do have another one. So I'm going to have to throw her onto my list as well. That's Dwarves. Let's talk about Shadowkin. We have 2 more left to go. And this one was a little bit tricky, I'm not going to lie. The first one I want to talk about is a Void Goody. Genbo the Dishonored, who I recently pulled myself on my Void Shard pulls this past weekend. Now, he has this buff, which allows him to go into his AoE, which gives him a 30% crit rate and a 30% crit damage buff. So if you're just using him for short-term nuking, where it's not meant for long-term, you can actually build this guy so that, because this is going to last for 3 turns, and then with books, this comes down to a 4-turn ability, right? So you could build them where you don't need to be crit capped, and assuming that you're going to have this buff, you would only need to build up to about 65%, right? Or with the Masters, right, you get 5% from the Masteries, so like 70%, I suppose, assuming that you're going to have this. And then he goes into the Heartless Blitz, which you might have seen in Arena. He's quite used in Arena a lot. This effect cannot be resisted on critical hits, but it decreases the duration of all buffs by 1. Pretty strong AoE. This is a 4x attack AoE modifier, especially with the enhanced crit damage. This guy smacks really hard. I've seen him in Arena. He sliced me up quite quickly. This is where things get a bit tough, because honestly, I'm not a big fan of a lot of these other characters. There is an AoE from Chani, so Shower of Misery here. Also increase the duration of all debuffs by +1 in AoE. I think this is 3.6x, so if you need an AoE nuker, this could be it. She also has this, but what I don't like is it's not a free turn, so this allows her to buff herself with increased accuracy and increased attack, and it's a single target attack, so you could do this, and then lead into the AoE for more damage rather than wasting it on turn 1. That's probably what I would do if you were using her. Some of the other characters don't really do a whole lot of AoE, and I'm not a personal big fan of a lot of these other characters. But if you have any of these others maxed out and you've used them for nuking purposes, there's like Nagorio, which I believe has an AoE too. He's not terrible. Attacks all enemies and decreases the cooldown of this skill by 1 when attacking under an increased attack buff. If you have someone to enable that, he does get this, but you have to knock people under 30% before this triggers. So, but it is protected, which is nice. But so I mean, you kind of have to like get it to happen, and you can't have this available right away. This would probably be the only other AoE nuker option for Shadowkin that is in the epics category. And then finally, we have some really great ones in Sylvan Watchers. I actually really like Sylvan Watchers, and I have to bring up Mist Rider Dithey. He's one of my favorite epic nukers in general, but also for Sylvan Watchers. He has one of those buffer skills that grants an extra turn. I love this stuff, but it's for 3 turns. Increase attack and increase accuracy for 3 turns. On a cooldown of 4 with books, so it's almost always up, and then goes into his AoE, which has a 60% decreased defense debuff, and he grants an extra turn if a 60% defense debuff is placed on all enemies by this skill. So if you get him booked up, then you can go right into an extra turn, especially on his A1, which hits pretty hard, and he has multiple chances to get extra turns here. It's not a lot, 10% here, but still pretty nice. I've seen him take multiple turns. And he's a really powerful DPS. Mist Rider Dithey, really, really great. Secondly, I want to bring up Pan the Bowhorn. So he does have another one of these kind of places a buff before attacking, which is pretty nice. So attack all enemies, but before he does it, places a 50% increase attack and speed buff on this champion for 3 turns on a cooldown of 3. So basically, if he's not being dispelled, you know, it's always up, which is really nice. AoE on a cooldown of 3 with an attack up buff, not so bad. Also, he does have a freeze on his A1 if you happen to need it, I guess. And then he has a 3-hit attack here, Woodland Spectre, and it can also apply a True Fear debuff. So again, pretty interesting character. I prefer Dithey, but if you don't have him and you have Pan, also very acceptable AoE DPS there. So those are 2 main characters that I want to talk about that are literally the best from the Sylvan Watchers faction. And I've been talking for about over 30 minutes. And so I want to leave it up to you guys now at this point. If there's anything I missed, please let me know in the comments down below. I hope some of these helped at least cover some of the more decent ones to build if you have them. If you're looking to improve your roster breadth in Faction Wars, in Cursed City, and these kind of places, some of these epic champions will help you to get there. Let me know if I missed anything, though. Before I end the video, I do want to remind people that if you haven't started playing Raid yet, get out from under that rock. Download using the QR code to get Narma the Returned, recently reworked, absolutely free. And these 3 amazing epics: Allure at account level 15, Tagore at account level 30, and Deacon Armstrong at level 40. And don't forget to use the promo code Demon Slayer within the first 48 hours of the brand new account to get Tholen Falbeard Legendary DPS Dwarf. That's it for me, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all on the next one. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you'll be greatly helping out the channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.